listen for a brand new show. Scooby Doo is here again, away we go.
Scooby Doo is running from a spooky ghost.
Shaggy isn't doing what he does the most. Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby Doo.
Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby Doo. That's my pal. Scooby Dooby Doo.
Hello again, my meddling Scooby Doo fans, and welcome to another review into the world of Scooby Doo. So last time we continued my 2025 Scooby Month with a review of Season 3, Episode 10 of the Scooby Doo Show. I hope you guys enjoyed that. We basically celebrated Scooby Doo's 56th birthday by going in depth on Season 3, Episode 10, and we talked about how it basically broke the streak of good episodes and was a pretty below-average episode with a lot of flaws, with the only redeeming factors being Shaggy and Scooby and the suspect pool. But of course today, I'll be covering Season 3, Episode 11 of the Scooby Doo Show, titled The Diabolical Disc Demon, which was released on November 18th, 1978. The short synopsis of the episode is, the gang go to Decade Records recording studio to watch a live recording of their friend, Jimmy Lewis. But the building is haunted by the Phantom, who is trying to find a song by a missing writer and will stop at nothing until he gets it. So as per usual, I'll be watching Season 3, Episode 11 of the Scooby Doo Show on the Scooby Doo Wario, the complete series box set. This box set has both seasons of Scooby Doo Wario as well as the third season of the Scooby Doo Show. Like I've said in my previous videos, if you're wondering why the third season of the Scooby Doo Show is on the Scooby Doo Wario box set, it's because Hanna-Barbera and Warner Brothers like to falsely advertise the third season of the Scooby Doo Show as a fake third season to Scooby Doo Wario. But I've established on the channel in past videos that this is not the case, and that the Scooby Doo Show had 3 seasons while Scooby Doo Wario only had 2 seasons. Now, as far as this episode's reception is concerned, I believe most fans like this episode, or at least consider it average. It has some discussion in the Scooby Doo community, a little bit, but not a whole lot. The main discussion point being the Phantom himself and how he basically looks like a member of KISS, which if you've seen the episode, you could definitely make that distinct. I could definitely see that distinction. But with that being said, is this episode good? Does this bring Season 3 back to its good ways? And will we kick off another streak of good episodes? Or does it continue the streak of bad episodes to possibly 2? Or maybe is it average and just right down the middle? Well, let's find out, shall we? So let's take a look at the episode to see whether I think it is a good or bad episode of the Scooby Doo Show. The episode begins one night at Decade Records, where songwriter Tony Signs is confronted and chased by a phantom who looks like a glam rock musician through the studio. After finding some locked doors in the hallway, Tony runs into a nearby office and writes down some music notes on a music sheet just as he gets cornered by the Phantom who looms over him. The gang is heading to Decade Records to watch a live recording of a famous friend of theirs, Jimmy Lewis. Upon their arrival at the studio, they are greeted by an unwelcoming security guard named Joe. Then Jimmy lets the gang in, letting the guard know that they are friends of his. Jimmy tells the gang that one of his songwriters, Tony Signs, has disappeared and left behind a strange piece of music that Jimmy tells the gang he'll be performing tonight. Jimmy introduces the gang to his pianist and arranger, Ian Barkin, and Ace Decade, the studio owner's nephew, and the recording engineer, Brick Tyler. Ian begins to play the song written by Tony before he disappeared, but suddenly the recording equipment begins to malfunction. Then the gang hear about a phantom that's haunting the studio, much to Scooby and Shaggy's chagrin. Then Jimmy explains that the phantom is a ghost of a musician seeking vengeance against those who ruined his career. Then Jimmy takes Fred, Daphne, and Velma on a tour of the studio, and then Shaggy and Scooby stay behind to play around with the equipment. Then the Phantom appears and chases Shaggy and Scooby, stealing the piece of music that Tony Signs wrote before he went missing. Then Shaggy and Scooby find the gang and Jimmy and tell them about their encounter with the Phantom. Then Jimmy and the gang return to the studio to look for the Phantom, but he's gone, along with the music. Scooby and Shaggy go to Jimmy's dressing room to retrieve a copy of the music and have another run-in with the Phantom, who tries to take the copy. Then the Phantom chases Shaggy and Scooby going after the music, and Scooby and Shaggy manage to escape with the music. Then they meet up with the gang and tell them about the Phantom. Suddenly, the Phantom comes over the intercom and threatens the gang. Then the gang decide to go search the offices for the Phantom, and then Shaggy and Scooby go to the cafeteria to chow down on some food, as well as some drinks. Then Velma, Fred, and Daphne find the source of the voice in Ace Decade's office. It was only a tape recording. Then Ace Decade tells the gang that he's got no idea how it got in there and no one else has a key but himself. Then Scooby and Shaggy go to the cafeteria to eat, and after some comical mishaps with the milkshake and vending machines, they suddenly hear a noise coming from a nearby storage closet. Peering into the room, Shaggy and Scooby see a shadowy figure roaring at them and assume that it's the Phantom and lock him in. Then they run to tell the gang, but then they're caught and thrown out by Joe the guard. This really makes no sense to me, because why would the security guard throw Shaggy and Scooby out if he knows he's friends? They're both friends with Jimmy Lewis. Like, to me, it just feels like a contrived reason to find the next clue of the episode, and I feel like there was a better way to do that. Like, I know he's an unfriendly security guard, but still, why would he throw out people who are not causing any sort of trouble, not doing anything illegal, and are literally there because they're friends of Jimmy Lewis, and this guy just throws them out for no reason? Back in the studio, the recording session was canceled and postponed until tomorrow. Scooby and Shaggy then devise a way to get back into the studio, but after a few failed attempts, they find hundreds of Jimmy Lewis records in the trash cans. They wondered who would throw them away. Meanwhile, Fred, Daphne, Velma, as well as Jimmy were thinking about what could be so special about the song that Tony Signs wrote. They realized that Tony was trying to tell them something. Just then, they hear a noise coming from the air vent. As Fred and Jimmy get ready, Scooby and Shaggy pop out of the air vent. When the rest of the gang asks them what they were doing inside the vent, Shaggy explains that it's a long story and tells them that the trash cans outside the studio were filled with Jimmy Lewis albums. But while Shaggy is telling the others about the clue outside, the Phantom creeps into the recording room. Fred asks what else Shaggy and Scooby had found, and Scooby saw the Phantom grabbing the music and alerted the others. As the Phantom laughs in triumph, Scooby lassos the music sheet with a microphone lead, pulling it from him. The Phantom chases them, and as the gang run for cover, Scooby folds the music sheet into a paper airplane and sends it flying around the room. As the gang try to grab the paper airplane, Scooby grabs it and flies with it, with the Phantom trying to grab him. As the Phantom chases Scooby, he dives onto a stack of tape reels, entangling the Phantom in the process, much to the delight of the gang and Jimmy, who praise Scooby for capturing the Phantom.
It's mine now, and you'll never get it back. Give that back. Good roping, partner. You will give that back to me now. Everybody, scatter.
Shaggy, the Phantom is right behind you.
Like somebody catch.
Grab it.
I've got it. Grab that plane, Scoob. I'm down here. Geronimo. Scooby did it.
Hey, captured the Phantom.
The Phantom is unmasked as Ace Decade, who was secretly stealing records from his uncle's studio and selling them for personal profit. Shaggy realizes that Ace had been smuggling the records out in the trash cans. However, Daphne is confused as Ace was the one who led everyone to the tape deck in his office. Fred explains to Daphne that the tape recording in his office was merely a ploy to make it seem like he was being framed. Which is weird to me because he was never suspected before that point in the episode, so I don't know why he felt the need to pretend like he was being framed. Like, he wasn't suspected as the bad guy before that point. If anything, it created unnecessary attention towards him and made him the prime suspect, when before that point, it was anybody. But once that tape recording and tape deck was in his office, he basically made himself suspect number one for no reason. The biggest clue was a song that Tony Signs wrote before he disappeared. The notes in the first 3 bars spelled out Ace Decade, pointing directly at Ace once Tony discovered his scheme. When Ace heard the song played on the piano, he understood Tony's message and faked the malfunction to stop the session. The Phantom disguise was a cover for his underhanded operation, designed to keep people away. Daphne then wonders what happened to Tony's signs, and Shaggy suddenly realizes Tony's whereabouts. Tony was the person Shaggy and Scooby had locked in the storage closet, mistaking him for the Phantom. Ironically, Tony had thought Shaggy and Scooby were the Phantom and apologized for scaring them earlier. Scooby then tries to scare Shaggy, who holds up a mirror, causing Scooby to scare himself. And the episode ends with him running off and crashing into a drink machine, covering himself in raspberry drink. I'm going to give Season 3, Episode 11 of The Scooby Doo Show 3 stars out of 5. Yeah, this was a decent episode. It was alright. It was, like, right down the middle. Definitely a little bit more negatives than there are positives. And it definitely bordered on below average. But overall, it was, like, an okay experience. You know, there's not really too much to say with this episode. Like, it was alright watching it. It's not one of the better episodes of the series, but certainly far from the worst of the series. So before I get into my negatives of the episode and what holds this episode back from being like a very good episode, like a 4 out of 5 episode, I'll get into my positives for the episode first and what elevated this episode above a below average episode to a decent episode. So starting with the positives, my first one is I think Shaggy and Scooby were good in this episode. What was interesting about Shaggy and Scooby is that they weren't good because of their basic roles. Like, I didn't particularly find Shaggy and Scooby to be very humorous in this episode. And they weren't really that cowardly. No, what Shaggy and Scooby did well in this episode is that they pretty much found all the clues in the episode and were the driving force of the entire episode. Fred, Daphne, and Velma did absolutely nothing in this episode, and it seemed like Shaggy and Scooby were doing all the work. They encountered the Phantom every single time throughout the episode, with Fred, Daphne, and Velma only encountering the Phantom at the end, which is odd to me. I don't know if the Phantom was like, if it was just unlucky coincidence that the Phantom and Shaggy and Scooby would always be meeting up with each other and have, you know, chase scenes, or if the Phantom was basically following them. I have no clue. But yeah, Shaggy and Scooby, while they didn't fulfill their basic roles, they basically propelled the plot of the episode forward. They were the driving force of the episode. They helped find all the clues of the episode. They were very helpful. They had an interesting dynamic in this episode. I kind of felt bad for Shaggy that all his food was being stolen. He couldn't find any food in the cafeteria. Although he gets some nice karma in return, as, like, he promises Scooby snacks, but then he's like, he's gonna have to owe him, and Scooby ends up, you know, not getting the Scooby snacks right then and there, which he kind of deserves. Like, Shaggy honestly shouldn't have to owe him any Scooby snacks. Like, Scooby owes Shaggy some food. And he was like, Scooby pilfered Shaggy with, like, 3 coins for that milkshake machine, and I feel so bad for Shaggy because he was so clueless to the fact that it worked properly. And yeah, Scooby got what he wanted, but poor Shaggy couldn't get what he wanted, which was a shame. But yeah, they had an interesting dynamic in this episode, and I think Shaggy and Scooby were really great in this episode because they were the main driving force. I don't really feel like Fred, Daphne, Velma really did much to propel the plot forward. This was really Shaggy and Scooby's mystery. They did practically everything in the episode. And they helped capture the villain at the end. I mean, to be fair, the Phantom was caught due to his own stupidity. Or you know, basically his drive to get the music sheet, which makes sense. But he got caught, not for any trap, but just because he was chasing Scooby to get the music sheet, and didn't watch where he was going, and basically crashed into a bunch of tapes, the tape reels, I believe. So yeah, Shaggy and Scooby overall, I think were good because they helped drive the plot of the episode forward. They found all the clues, and they basically helped capture the villain at the end of the episode. I thought there were a good number of suspects in the episode. So you had 4 suspects in the episode. You had Joe, the security guard. You had Ian Barkin, who was the pianist. You had Ace Decade, the studio owner's nephew. And you had Brick Tyler, the recording engineer. So all of them were, like, equally suspicious. Nothing any of them did was particularly stood out anyway. The only one that was an idiot was Ace Decade, because he basically put the tape deck in his office for no reason other than make it look like he was being framed. Which was entirely possible, but he didn't really need to do that, as nobody was suspicious of him before that point. So the fact that he put that in his office only made him suspect number one, as far as I'm concerned. And I guess if there were any musically inclined people who could read the notes on the music sheet, then maybe you could guess that it was Ace Decade. But other than that, a lot of people wouldn't really immediately associate Ace Decade as the primary suspect. I felt like all of them were equally suspicious because none of them really stood out in any way. Ace Decade just made like a couple blunders here and there, to be quite honest, which is why he ended up being the number one on the suspect department. But it wasn't unlikely that the other three were framing him. So yeah, and you had one villain. So 4 suspects is a really good pool of suspects because it gives you because it really could be anybody. Definitely Joe the security guard is probably the red herring of the episode. He's very unfriendly. He tosses Shaggy and Scooby out for no reason. So he's definitely the red herring. Whereas the other 3 are kind of more like the subtle ones of the 3, the less likely ones, but still plausible. I found the mystery of the episode to be good as well. So the main mystery I found in this episode was, why was this particular phantom haunting Decade Records? There's a vague backstory of him, basically being a ghost that is seeking vengeance against those who ruin his career. But nothing in that backstory implicates Decade Records in it. So unless if somebody from his past career is working for Decade Records, you're not really sure why he's haunting this particular setting, because it doesn't say he has a particular vendetta against anybody in the studio or the studio in general. He's just kind of like this, unnamed supposed musician who seeked vengeance against those who supposedly ruined his career. But who will ruin his career and who he's trying to seek vengeance against, we don't know. And you also want to know, why is he after Tony Signs? Like, why is he after this songwriter? Is Tony Signs somehow connected to the Phantom's past? Is he the one that's trying to get the Phantom's trying to get vengeance towards? Or is he just after him for something else? And why does he want the music sheet? What is so important about this particular music sheet that Tony Signs wrote that he doesn't want, that he needs to get back? So yeah, there's a lot of mystery about why the Phantom's haunting this particular recording studio, why he went after Tony Signs, and why he basically wanted this music sheet that Tony Signs wrote on before he was kidnapped by the Phantom. So a lot of good questions, and we get good answers to them. And my final positive is I found the setting of the episode to be good as well. So the main setting of the episode is, of course, Decade Records, the recording studio. Decade Records is an interesting setting because we've not really had a recording studio as a main setting for a Scooby Doo episode before. So this was a nice change of pace. It was fresh and unique. We hadn't had a recording studio as a setting up to this point in the franchise. So it was really cool to have the gang basically exploring this recording studio and solving a mystery in a recording studio. It's not said where Decade Records is particularly located, but, if it's in America, it may possibly be in New York or maybe California, maybe one of the big cities. I could see it being in one of those record studios, especially considering Jimmy Lewis seems to be a big, even though he's a friend of the gang, he's clearly a big musician, or at least has some kind of career that he's able to has some name to himself. So it wouldn't be impossible that maybe they're in New York again, or maybe Los Angeles or something like that, or like somewhere else in any one of the big cities possibly. But yeah, I think a recording, regardless of where it is, a recording studio is a really nice, fresh, and unique type of setting for an episode. And I think it was a nice idea for Hanna-Barbera to go that route, because it hadn't been done up to that point. But that's all I got for positives, so I think it's about time to get on to the negatives of the episode and what brings this episode down for me personally. So starting with the negatives, my first one is I think Fred, Daphne, and Velma were all weak in this episode. Like I said previously when I was talking about Shaggy and Scooby, Fred, Daphne, and Velma did absolutely nothing throughout this episode. They felt like background characters. They barely contributed to the story. And Shaggy and Scooby were really the main driving force. Fred was not a leader in this episode. He didn't feel like any sort of leader in this episode. He didn't help piece together the clues to help solve the mystery, and he didn't create any sort of cool trap in this episode. Daphne did nothing stand out, once again. She didn't find any of the clues. She wasn't much of a leader, didn't help piece together the clues to help solve the mystery, didn't even fulfill Shaggy and Scooby's role of being cowardly or comedic. So she really didn't do anything to stand out in any way, and same with Velma. Velma didn't really help piece together the clues to help solve the mystery either. She wasn't really much of a leader. She didn't find clues either. Like, none of the three of them really fulfilled their basic roles in this episode, and they basically just felt kind of unnecessary to the story. They felt like background characters. They felt like they didn't really contribute anything. And that's a shame. It felt like Shaggy and Scooby were really the driving force of this episode, and that Fred, Daphne, Velma, honestly, if they weren't there, the mystery still probably would have been solved without them, because they really don't contribute anything in this episode. I found the villain of the episode to be weak as well. So the main villain of the episode is, of course, the Phantom. He doesn't really have a particular name in this episode. He's just referred to as the Phantom. So he doesn't really have a distinctive name. I guess if you want to give him one, you could call him the Kiss Phantom, which would probably be suitable, or the Rock and Roll Phantom, or the Decade Records Phantom, whatever you want to call him. But the Phantom, he just didn't really stand out anyway. He wasn't scary in the slightest. He looked like a typical rock star, to be quite honest. Nothing about him was ghostly whatsoever. He didn't do anything scary at all. He wasn't entertaining at all either. He didn't really stand out in any way or have any sort of presence. To me, the Phantom just didn't have that much screen time. He didn't do a whole lot in this episode. And he just was a very weak villain overall. Like, he just wasn't scary at all in this episode. Not any bit. He didn't threaten the gang's safety. He wasn't fun or entertaining to watch. He was just very weak in this episode because of the lack of screen time. And the fact that he just, like, kind of felt a bit repetitive with, a past villain. Where he was like the Creeper going after a sheet of paper. It just felt a bit repetitive, which I'm going to get onto in the motive section because wow, is a lot of the elements of his motive very repetitive. But yeah, the Phantom, he's just lame. He's got a lame name. He doesn't do a whole lot. He's not scary. He just looks like a typical rock star of the late 1970s, or like there's nothing about him that's particularly distinct or ghostly. He's not fun or entertaining to watch. He's just a very weak and uninteresting villain, in my opinion. Outside of costume, I found Ace Decade to be very uninteresting. Ace Decade didn't really do a whole lot in this episode. I mean, he brought up the Phantom, but he didn't really provide any sort of backstory for the Phantom. He didn't really do anything to stand out. The one thing he did do to make himself stand out was stupid, though, because he basically implicated himself as the primary suspect because he put a tape recording of the Phantom in his own office for no good reason, because nobody was suspicious of him. So it would have made more sense had he been the primary suspect and was suspected of being the villain. But, like, he did that to throw suspicion off. But to me, he didn't do that. And to me, he just, it felt like he was being stupid and dumb and made a lot of poor decisions outside of costume. So yeah, Ace Decade, not a very interesting character. Doesn't do a whole lot. He's very uninteresting as far as I'm concerned outside of costume. I found the motive of the episode to be very weak and repetitive. So Ace Decade's main motive is that essentially he wanted to scare everyone away so that he could continue stealing his uncle's records and sell them for personal profit, as well as get the music sheet back that incriminates him as the villain. So this motive just feels very reminiscent of the Pterodactyl Ghost episode and the Creeper episode. Because in the Pterodactyl Ghost episode, they basically were smuggling cassette tapes, records, you name it, like albums, like, so this isn't anything new. We've had records being sold, and for like profit. So that's nothing new. And then we got the sheet of paper, which is literally just like the Creeper. The Creeper's after the paper because it has a picture of him stealing the money. This is the exact same thing, where the music sheet has Ace Decade's name on it and implicates him as the villain. So that's why he needs to get it back. And so there's no new elements to this motive. There's no layers to it. There's nothing unique or interesting about it. And listen, like I said, I've said this in the past, I don't mind them reusing motives. I just want them to add some type of fresh layer to it to make it fun or interesting. And to me, this just feels like a mishmash of previous motives that we've seen before, but they don't add anything new to that motive. They don't do anything different that those two motives do. They're essentially just a Frankenstein mishmash of those two motives and don't really stand out in any particular way. There's no sort of layers to it to make it more interesting. So to me, the motive's very weak and repetitive. It's essentially the same motive as the pterodactyl ghost and the creeper. If you were to combine the both of them, it's essentially those two motives combined together. And to me, that's very weak and uninteresting and very repetitive. I found the clues of the episode to be weak as well. So, the main clues of the episode were the trash can filled with Jimmy Lewis records. You had the tape recorder, and then you had the music sheet with Ace Decade's name on it. Now, none of these clues are very, very impressive. Sure, the records in the trash can could maybe point towards a motive, and maybe you could argue the music sheet points towards a suspect. But unless if you're very musically inclined, it's very unlikely you're going to, suspect Ace Decade's the villain just by looking at that music sheet of paper. I just don't feel like any of the clues are that particularly strong. I don't really feel like they do a good job of, doing their main functions, which is narrowing down the list of suspects. Like, sure, you could argue the music sheet and maybe the tape recorder narrow down the list of suspects. But just because Ace Decade made those fumbles doesn't necessarily mean that he was going to be the villain. Like, it was still possible that he was being framed and that somebody else was being the villain and trying to throw suspicion off them. But no, it just turned out to be Ace Decade's an idiot. But yeah, to me, like, I just don't think it's strong enough for me to consider it, like, narrowing down the list of suspects. And yeah, the trash can filled with Jimmy Lewis records could potentially point towards the motive. But at the end of the day, I just don't think they do a strong enough job of fulfilling their basic functions. Like, yeah, it's debatable that maybe they did, but I just personally find them very weak clues. And I don't find them particularly interesting. I don't think they're very creative or interesting, and I don't feel like they really fulfill their basic functions. Even if it were to be argued that maybe they did, I still feel like they weren't particularly strong enough. And it wasn't definitive enough on it being Ace Decade and, what his motive is. A good clues can be a little bit more definitive, and I don't feel like these ones were. So yeah, weak clues in this episode, in my opinion. And my final negative is I found the atmosphere of the episode to be very weak in this episode. So I felt no sort of atmosphere in this episode. I felt no tension or suspense, no creepiness or eeriness. Wasn't fearing for the gang's safety, wasn't on the edge of my seat wondering what was going to happen next. Didn't find anything the villain did was creepy or eerie, and nothing about the setting was creepy or eerie. It honestly just felt like a normal recording studio, and while the setting was nice, they didn't do a whole lot to create any sort of atmosphere in this episode, and from either the villain or the setting. So to me, yeah, there was no atmosphere to speak of. It was very weak and non-existent, and it just... I just didn't feel any sort of atmosphere at all in this episode. Overall, guys, I would personally not recommend this episode to fans and newcomers of the show. Despite it being average, to me, it just has too many flaws in it. Like, it just has way more negatives than positives, and for me, despite it being decent and down the middle, there's just not enough for me to personally recommend it to you guys. I just don't think it's really worth your time. I think there are better episodes that you can watch. But compared to the below average and terrible episodes, then yeah, put this one on. But there clearly are better ones in the Scooby Doo Show, and to me, this just isn't one of them. It just has too many problems for me to consider it worthy enough to go check out. So yeah, I personally wouldn't really recommend this episode despite my average rating. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Please give it a like if you did. Comment down below your thoughts on the episode. Do you like this episode? Do you think I'm being too harsh on it? Or are there more good aspects to it that you see that I don't see? Do you hate this episode? I'd be interested in that as well. Do you think it's worse than I'm making it out to be? Are there more terrible aspects to it that you see that I don't see? Or are you somewhere in the middle like me where you think it's decent, it's average, it's okay, but it's not good or bad? I'm curious for your thoughts, so let me know. And subscribe for more Scooby Doo content like this, or if you're just interested in any of my other content. Obviously, I have more Scooby Doo reviews on the way. This is a Scooby focused channel, so we cover all things ranging from the TV shows, the movies, the video games, the books. If you're a diehard Scooby Doo fan like me, or a casual fan even, and if you love talking all things Scooby Doo and want to be involved in each individual discussion on TV episode reviews, movie reviews, video game reviews and playthroughs, and book reviews, then come join the channel and experience some amazing Scooby Doo content. In my next video, I'll continue my reviews of the Scooby Doo Show for my 2025 Scooby Month with a review of Season 3, Episode 12 of the Scooby Doo Show, titled Scooby's Chinese Fortune Cookie Caper. Wow, is that a mouthful. I'm actually interested in watching this episode. I remember liking it last time I watched it, and I've gone back to it a couple times, so I think this is going to be a good episode, or at least it should be a little bit better than this one, I would hope. But I am pretty interested to see if it lives up to my previous expectations, and at least is decent or good. Hopefully we can get another good episode. I'm very interested to see the moon monster and the Chinese setting of the episode. So if you want to know my thoughts on Season 3, Episode 12 of the Scooby Doo Show, Scooby's Chinese Fortune Cookie Caper, then come join me next time. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, peace out.
Got it all together for a brand new show. Scooby Doo is here again, away we go.
Scooby Doo is running from a spooky ghost.
Shaggy isn't doing what he does the most. Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby Doo.
Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby Doo. That's my pal. Scooby Dooby Doo.